everyone, my name is Savannah. Welcome back to Mayberry Park Zoo, which is one of our sandbox mode projects in Planet Zoo. And it's been so long, and I feel so bad about starting every Mayberry Park Zoo episode with "it's been so long," but this is one of those parks that I kind of fall in and out of depending on where my inspiration is, and for a little while there, I kind of lost my inspiration for building with Planet Zoo, and I decided to take a step back and take a little bit of a break and just kind of, go in and out here or there, build here and there kind of thing. And I actually finished this build a while ago, and it's just taken me so long to find the time and sit down and record the voiceover. To give you guys just a little bit of backstory, life for me has been very, very busy between work and just normal life stuff, getting my Etsy store up and running. And for those of you that don't know, I started an Etsy sticker store. So if you're looking for some adorable animal themed stickers, the link is down below in the description, and you'd be supporting me and supporting the channel, and I would love you forever for it. But that aside, it's taken quite a bit of time up in my life, and Tears of the Kingdom released. So I fell down a deep, deep rabbit hole playing Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild was one of my absolute favorite games, and I spent hundreds of hours completing and 100%ing that. So I am back at it with Tears of the Kingdom and really enjoying getting into that game. But that also means that with my very limited video game time, it's been taking away some from Planet Zoo just a little bit. However, I was just talking to Estan Wolf about this. Actually, I've kind of found my groove again and my inspiration for building. So I've been jumping back into not only Mesa Gardens Zoo, which is our franchise zoo, but also building for our next species breakdown video, which is going to be our African wild dog. And then we have to kind of backtrack a little bit and do the African crested porcupine, because I am doing those species breakdown in alphabetical order. And because the African porcupine was actually added, I have to go back and do one for that as well. So that's what I'll be working on here in the coming weeks, as well as just some sand park mode builds for the various projects that I have going on. And that actually brings me to, this is the very first time that I've recorded a voiceover after the Arid Animal Pack has released. So that's going to be my very first question for you. Let me know down in the comments, how are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying it being an animal pack? Or are you missing some scenery pieces like many of the community do when we only get an animal pack? There are always some individuals that miss new building pieces. I personally, in the game, I honestly don't use all the pieces that we have. So I'm not necessarily missing new build pieces. I think we're at a point in the game where we have absolutely so many building pieces. Now, obviously, we could always use more, and I'm not saying that the game is complete in my eyes by any means, but I don't find myself going without or not finding a piece that I really need all too often. Now, maybe that's because I just am not as creative as other builders, or I just have my favorite pieces, and those are generally what I gravitate towards. But I don't find myself missing the lack of new additional pieces with an animal pack, and I just get excited about new animals because at the end of the day, I play Planet Zoo because I'm an animal lover, and I love playing and watching the animals move around and building the exhibits for them. Now, that being said, I don't even think that I have mentioned what the heck we're doing, but I'm sure you've noticed by the thumbnail and the title. We're adding both the European fallow deer and the red deer to Mayberry Park Zoo. And I've picked this little area off to the side of the entrance. It's actually right across from where we have the badgers. And originally, when I was first looking in this park and trying to decide what I was going to build, I kind of picked out this space and I mapped out the shape of the exhibit. And I was originally thinking some sort of carnivore or some sort of larger animal, but I felt that it was much too close to the entrance to put such a high ticket item or high ticket animal. It's not an item, high ticket animal at the very front of the park, because right next to the Badgers is basically the entrance plaza. This is really only just a few steps off of the main entrance area. So then going off of that, it was quite a big space that I mapped out in kind of this traditional kidney bean, or I shouldn't say traditional, very common, I guess, kidney bean shaped habitat area. And then I kind of thought about well, what about hoofstock? And because Mayberry Park Zoo is supposed to be temperate, I guess, in its environment, and I didn't really want to do an African species because I really wanted, those African species to be saved for a specific African area, I landed on the deer, and I think they fit absolutely perfectly. So what you can see I'm doing here is I'm actually working on some tree covers for inside the exhibit, because you would want to keep your trees protected from the deers rubbing up against them, especially the males with their antlers, rubbing their antlers up and down on the trunks, and just altogether being a little destructive. I've already completed the outside kind of fence line. I left in that first stone fencing around the exhibit just for sake of inspiration. I know some of you guys watch these and take tips and inspiration from what I'm building. And if I don't include a lot of things, then, there's not a lot for you to see, really. And then, I don't know, maybe that stone wall didn't really work for my exhibit, but it'll work perfectly for something that you're building. So I like to try to keep as much of that in the videos as possible. But now I'm just working on a little bit of a shade structure for both sides. And this exhibit was fairly easy for me to build, because essentially I'm building one side of the exhibit and then just kind of mirroring or copying it on the other side of the exhibit. So I really only had to design this one shade structure and some, eating area trough kind of structures, and then just duplicate it on either side. Because when you're looking at this exhibit, the European fallow deer are on the left-hand side and the red deer are on the right-hand side. And there is a divider in the middle, so they don't actually share the same space. Now, looking back on the exhibit, one thing that I did really struggle with this one is that there really isn't a huge support area for this exhibit, or a back area where the keepers would be able to have some of the food or the equipment that they might use. But in all reality, when you look at some of the exhibits like this that house hoofstock, not all of them have huge support areas with back holding that's out of sight from guests. Many of these enclosures are just big fenced in areas, and then keepers can go in open or free contact with the animals and take care of them that way. So I do end up building just a little building at the back, you'll see, but it really only has a door that a person can go through. It's not really something that you're gonna kind of usher a deer through. It's not like a gate system or a shifting pen or a catch or anything like that. So my thought was, Mayberry Park Zoo is more of a temperate city zoo, and so maybe they don't have all the space in the world, and that's kind of just a product of that, of not having all the space and massive areas to have these big buildings or these big sprawling enclosures and things like that. And I was really only focusing on the main kind of front exhibit area where you're going to see the animals. Now, that means that when you're managing your animals on exhibit, you're going to have, some medical cases out on exhibit sometimes, or maybe they have an area on the other side of the zoo where before park opens, they would have to go in, and however they're going to transport this animal, whether they load them up in a trailer, whether they sedate them and then load them up and then truck them across the park, however the method would be, you'd have to do that to get the animal off exhibit. So not necessarily the most I guess, the easiest setup. I have never personally worked with deer, so I don't really know a whole lot about their captive care or how you would manage a collection of deer on exhibit without like a massive backstage or back holding area kind of thing. The only exhibits that I'm really used to seeing are going to be like at the San Diego Zoo's Safari Park, where they have those big African enclosures with lots and lots of space, and their hoofstocks kind of, you know, walking all over those exhibits, and they go in and they can drive around with cars or trucks because they're that big. And that's obviously not the type of enclosure that we have here. Much, much smaller. I even thought at one point that maybe this was originally built for something else, and they've kind of modified it to have deer inside of it. That's something that I do see quite often, is that zoos will shift enclosures to house different species depending on how their collection changes or their needs and things like that for their current animals. So just going through here and adding lots and lots of rocks as per usual, and lots of trees and foliage as per usual. Again, if I forgot to say this, I am building this 100% before the Arid Animal Pack ever released. So not that we got any new species or anything like that, or not new species, new pieces or anything like that. We did get new species because it's an animal pack. I built this so long ago that it was before the Arid Animal Pack ever came out. So we are missing that like one bush or something like that, the dry one that came with the Arid Animal Pack. But anyway, this build was just built a while ago. And then so to this back building, I do actually end up adding like a little concrete footing, little concrete like slab. This is where the keepers will put a lot of the hay to feed their deer. It's another option for shade and shelter from the elements. And so again, this is a really small building, but I'm kind of happy with how it turned out. Again, it's kind of the same from the left to the right. I do a little bit of support systems. These twilight beams, the twilight beams that came in that pack are just, they're so good. They're my new favorite wood beam. And as soon as we get new wooden beams, those are going to be my new favorite ones. In fact, actually, I really like the Indonesian like trim pieces and stuff that we got with the tropical pack. Those are pretty good. But anyway, I am doing a little bit of trim, a little bit of detailing and support on this little front area. But for the most part, it's a relatively plain, just kind of utilitarian building. It's just kind of got what it needs and no frills or anything like that. Hindsight, I probably could have added just a little bit more decals to make it look a little messy. But here I'm doing just a little feeder, like a little hay feeder and whatnot. Again, I'm imagining the keepers can come into this exhibit, and there's no reason to need to service the exhibit from the outside or with protective contact for these animals, that they should be able to go in and take care of them by being in the exhibit, which means also bringing in hay and stuff by hand and filling up the exhibit as it is. Now I'm just going ahead and using the buffalo grass actually to mimic hay and fill this all up. I'm pretty sure I used the buffalo grass, right? I think that's what I have. Anyway, some of the grasses that I love to use all over the ground, they're my favorite pieces, but they work really well as hay with the dried versions of them. So just filling up those little hay racks and then duplicating it to the other side. Now, thinking about the future of Mayberry Park Zoo, because I kind of want to do just a little bit more planning and less kind of cookie cutter building where I just kind of carve out a little section and build whatever I feel like building, but do a little bit of thought process, a little bit of planning. And I'm thinking that past this area, where past like the aardvarks, we can start to go into like an African section. And I'm thinking of maybe starting with some camels and then moving into more like typical African species, or maybe just a desert section altogether. I really want to incorporate the camels because they're new, the dromedary camels and everything, and I really want to build for them. And I think building like a dromedary and Bactrian camel kind of combination thing might be really cool, and I have a lot of inspiration for that. So that's kind of what I kind of came up with that idea and want to do that. So I'm kind of trying to mold what I want to do around that and make that kind of fit in with my overall idea. But absolutely let me know what you all think down in the comment section, and if there's another arid animal pack animal that you think I should add first, or if there's an animal that's not in the arid animal pack that you think should be added first, definitely let me know. I may absolutely forget by the time I get back to building in Mayberry Park Zoo, but hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, so adding maybe the dromedary camel, and then moving more in with the gazelle, the addax, giraffes maybe down the road. Maybe Mayberry Park Zoo has like a smaller kind of mixed species African savanna type exhibit. I'll have to think about that one because I don't want it to be super, super huge. I'm kind of thinking like Elephant Odyssey at the San Diego Zoo is kind of my idea, my inspiration for that kind of section going off from the back of this exhibit. But yeah, let me know. That idea is kind of in its infancy. I really haven't spent a whole lot of time fleshing it out or thinking about it a whole lot. But I definitely want to keep adding, keep building in this park because I really enjoy this park and I'm loving how it's coming together. Although I already do want to kind of redo the Asian section where we added the Japanese crowned crane, or the red crowned crane, excuse me, the red crowned crane. I already kind of want to redo that little area because I feel like that doesn't kind of mesh in with the park very well. And if you've missed it, that video is up on the channel. It's when the red crown crane was first added to the game. And I do overall like the build. I don't know, maybe I can do some more work on getting it to fit in overall with the park. But for now, I kind of think it just looks like pasted down and like it doesn't belong almost. So I think I want to work on that just a little bit more. I am finally getting to the guest shade structure using this circular symmetry technique. Same thing that I did with the shade structures for the exhibit, but I'm doing it on a bigger scale with slightly different pieces, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. I actually really enjoy this meshing in with the park because it kind of goes along with that little like ice cream stand thing that we built a bunch of episodes ago, because it's the same kind of colors, it's the same Australian plank pieces, but instead of making the planks horizontal like I did on the other one, these ones are, I guess instead of making them perpendicular to the structural pieces, they're parallel to the structural pieces. So we get this really nice circular structure with a little bit of a tiered system just to give it some interest so it's not totally flat and one-dimensional, just to give it a little bit of texture, a little bit of detail. And I'm really happy with how it turns out. Gosh, those Australian pieces, those planks, some of my favorite pieces in the game. That aesthetic is definitely like one of my favorites in the game. I absolutely love it. But then just going through, switching up some things, rotating some things so it doesn't look so tiled and so samey, moving pieces up and down so we don't get any of that clipping, and then just adding some finishing touches. I don't think I end up leaving this. I was toying around with making it partly thatched and partly wooden, but I get rid of the thatch altogether because it just didn't look right. But the little tiered system looks great. So doing a little bit more structural stuff, and then we're actually going to end this episode doing a custom sign.